I'm sorry, are you seriously suggesting we bet our Q3 budget on an AI hallucination engine? That was how it started. That was the line. The one that's been etched in my skull like a scar ever since. I had just finished my pitch, 20 minutes clean, backed by real-world benchmarks and mocked-up dashboards. An AI-driven forecasting tool I'd been quietly developing in the margins of my role for months. Sleek, precise, cheap. Way to finally kill off the Frankenstein spreadsheet models that took 6 analysts and a prayer to run. The room was silent, not the good kind. The kind that makes your ears burn. Then came the laugh. A short, nasal snort from Mark, the director with a Harvard degree and a Sears Roebuck soul. He looked down the table, gave that fake charm smirk he'd patented, and said, "Thanks for the ambition, but we don't risk money on fantasies, just like that. Fantasies." He said it like I'd proposed a unicorn farm. The rest of the boardroom responded like a school of fish smelling blood. A few cleared throats. Someone coughed into their sleeve. Pam from HR shuffled her papers like she was trying to disappear between the lines. I saw Jared, the junior data analyst with too much potential and not enough spine, flash me the briefest look of sympathy before fixing his gaze on the coffee tray like it owed him rent. The humiliation didn't hit me all at once. It seeped in through my blouse collar, through the soles of my heels, through the silence that swallowed the rest of the meeting like nothing had happened. By the time Mark pivoted back to our existing pipeline investments, I was already staring at the dry erase board, doing the math on how many hours I could steal back from my nights and weekends. And hey, quick thing before we dive deeper into this mess. I'm building this little world out here piece by piece, and if this story hits you right in that hell yes spot, toss me a sub. I'm chasing my first 10,000 subscribers the same way I chased respect in that boardroom, with zero shortcuts and a mountain of coffee. You clicking that button feels better than watching Mark choke on a stale KPI report. Anyway, I nodded, said nothing, and packed up my notes. Not the deck, I had memorized it all. I left the printed version on the table like a corpse for the janitor. I walked out, hit the elevator, and smiled for the first time in weeks. You want to call something a fantasy? Fine. I'll build it into a reality so big, you'll choke on your own denial. That night, I pulled out the napkin sketches I'd made during boring Zoom calls. Flowcharts. A logic engine I'd been tweaking for fun. Crude UI I'd mocked up using free design tools. I poured myself a drink, opened my busted old laptop, and created a new folder. Not a fantasy AI, the next 3 hours flew by. I mapped the first data input pipelines, sourced public demand signals from retail and logistics APIs, and slapped together a basic neural model architecture. Nothing pretty, nothing proprietary, but mine. Meanwhile, back at work, the finance team was beta testing a $2 million system from a consulting firm that required a 3-week onboarding call and a blood pact to make a single adjustment. I started wearing a new mask at work, burnout. Easy to fake when corporate life already sucks your soul through a spreadsheet. I began dodging extra projects, pleading mental bandwidth during planning meetings. No one asked questions, except Jared. A week later, he cornered me in the stairwell. "Hey, that model you pitched, it actually made sense. I ran some numbers based on your assumptions, quietly." I raised an eyebrow. He shrugged. "If you ever wanted someone to, I dunno, stress test a thing or two off the clock." And just like that, the seed sprouted. Not just in me, but in someone else. Mark thought he killed my idea in that boardroom. He just gave it teeth. There's something holy about typing code at 2 a.m. under a flickering stove light while the world outside sleeps like it hasn't been gaslit by upper management. That's how it began. No fancy setup. No angel investors. Just me, a secondhand laptop that wheezed louder than my neighbor's Pomeranian, and a brain that wouldn't shut up. Every night after I clocked out of my joyless spreadsheet charade, I'd make dinner, open a bottle of red I couldn't afford, dive back in, Python scripts, TensorFlow pipelines, messy, glorious experimentation. I scoured government databases for economic indicators, scraped public sales feeds, rigged news sentiment scrapers using open-source Reddit crawlers, everything cobbled together with duct tape and stubbornness. Nothing touched my work laptop, not a line of code, not a whisper of an idea. I bought a burner email, a new Notion account, even registered a random domain with one of those sketchy coupon sites. I was more careful than a felon on parole, because I knew the company's IT team, nosy, bored, and loyal to Mark. All it'd take was one slip and they'd brand me a data security risk, which is corporate for we found a reason to kill your career. I tracked every expense. A $19 subscription to a server host, $12.99 on a keyboard because the old one stuck on backspace, $32 for Thai food because sleep is optional but curry isn't. My savings took hits, but my soul, it started breathing again, and for the first time in years I felt alive, not performatively productive, not linked in certificate productive. Actually building something. Every new line of logic brought the tool closer to what I saw in my head. A forecasting engine that didn't just regurgitate stale assumptions, it adapted. Learned. Understood nuance in human behavior. Not some AI-powered word salad, but the real deal. Meanwhile, back at the office, I watched the company piss away $2 million on a bloated predictive insights suite from a firm whose name sounded like a pharmaceutical side effect. The onboarding was a joke. I sat in 7-hour meetings with transformation leads who explained basic regression models like they were delivering the Ten Commandments. Once, during a demo, the consultant proudly showed off how the system could predict demand spikes using lunar phase alignment. I kid you not. I wrote in my notes, full moon equals sales of adult diapers surge. No one laughed. No one blinked. They nodded. Mark said, now that's innovation. I wanted to scream, but instead, I smiled because I knew the cracks were forming. The system had already missed its first internal deadline. The team had started pulling late nights trying to backfill missing variables the consultant hadn't accounted for. Finance was quietly complaining that the real-time dashboard lagged by 6 hours, and there I was, sitting through these slow-motion disasters with a half-finished version of my own tool, quietly humming along on my home machine. It wasn't pretty yet, but it worked. It adjusted predictions in near real time based on inventory snapshots and social trends. One night, I fed it 3 weeks of Etsy seller data, and it correctly flagged a mini boom in customized pet urns. Grim, yes, accurate, scarily so. I stopped asking for new projects. When people asked how I was doing, I said just, burn out, and watched them nod solemnly, eyes glassy from their own death by PowerPoint existences. The rebellion wasn't loud. It wasn't fire and fury. It was quiet, focused, underground, and it was growing claws. The first time someone used my tool and didn't know my name, I almost cried. I just uploaded the MVP, minimum viable product, maximum midnight sweat. It ran through a janky UI on a discount server, held together with open source plugins and desperate prayers. I branded it with a fake startup name, Clairvoyant Metrics. The logo, AI generated. It looked like a horoscope app had slept with a spreadsheet. No bio, no photo, just a slogan, smarter forecasting. No fortune tellers required. Then I walked away from the keyboard, poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, and waited for silence. Except there wasn't silence. That same night, an indie bookstore in Colorado signed up and uploaded 6 months of sales history. It wanted help predicting holiday traffic and inventory needs for signed copies of niche horror authors. My tool spit out a result in under 3 minutes. The reply came 2 hours later, holy S. This is better than what we pay Shopify Premium for. I reread that email 11 times. Then I started pacing. Because here's the thing nobody tells you when you chase your wild little idea into the wilderness. When it works, it doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like panic. Like you're holding a lit firecracker with no idea when it'll go off. More businesses trickled in, freelancers, small logistics shops, even a guy who ran 4 gas stations in Arizona and wanted to stop overordering hot Cheetos on weekends. I kid you not. My AI flagged a pattern tied to local high school football schedules and suggested reallocation based on kickoff dates. He wrote back, I don't know who you are, but I think I love you. Emotionally, I was on a seesaw. One minute I was grinning like a lunatic in my kitchen. The next, I was checking my burner email like it was a bomb. Every time someone used the system, I imagined a lawyer from work busting through my door yelling about NDAs and unauthorized IP replication. But no one came, and more users did. They started asking for features. Filters for SKU clusters, a confidence slider. I stayed up till 3 a.m. most nights, shipping changes, patching bugs, writing rough facts that made me sound like a real company and not one woman in Target sweatpants with a dream and a dangerously high caffeine tolerance. A community started forming, quiet, weird, loyal. They'd comment on each other's feedback, trade hacks, ask when I'd add visual dashboards. I watched it all happen in a little forum I built using a plugin that hadn't been updated since 2018. My imposter syndrome tried to claw back in. But the data didn't lie. People liked this. Meanwhile, back at my corporate circus tent, reality was catching fire. Mark's $2M enterprise forecasting solution had just completely flubbed Q3 planning. The error didn't account for international shipping disruptions from port slowdowns in Southeast Asia. You know what did? Mine. I had coded a Reddit-driven sentiment trigger for logistics news just for fun. The hot Cheetos guy saw it. Mark, he was too busy yelling at procurement. The office was in quiet panic. Slack channels exploded with terms like emergency variance analysis and manual reconciliation. They started calling all-hands meetings with 4 different consultants. One of them even pulled up a whiteboard and said, has anyone here considered exploring alternative models? I almost laughed out loud. Instead, I sat in the back of the room, sipping burnt coffee, watching them drown in their own safe decisions. They didn't want to risk money on a fantasy? Turns out, reality's way more expensive. First time I showed up late to a 9 a.m. strategy sync and nobody said a word, I realized something. I had successfully become invisible. Not fired, not missed, just unnoticed, and I leaned into it like a woman slipping through a crack in the system. I wasn't lazy, I was strategic. I called it conservation mode. Where once I'd led cross-functional whiteboard frenzies with color-coded charts and unnecessary optimism, I now sat with my mic off, camera off, typing good point in chat, while batch processing beta feedback for clairvoyant metrics on my phone. My job had become the background hum in my life, ambient noise I tolerated while building something that actually mattered. Whenever anyone did ask questions, why wasn't I taking the lead on quarterly planning? Why did I turn down that new internal committee on forecasting best practices? I'd sigh and use the most bulletproof excuse in corporate America. I think I'm just a little burnt out. The overhead is crushing lately. Boom, sympathy unlocked. No further questions. The beauty of corporate burnout is no one really wants to fix it. They just want to acknowledge it, murmur some faux concern, and move on before they catch it too. I became a ghost with benefits. Direct deposit still hit every Friday. Health insurance, intact. And while the office flailed over why their fancy tool missed demand by 18%, I spent my weekends building a roadmap for something 10 times smarter and alive. Every small win in my secret life added fuel. New feature request, shipped. Bug report from a pet supply chain in Oregon, fixed in 2 hours. A tiny European wholesaler reached out to thank me for helping them finally see daylight in their inventory. I reread that line 5 times and felt something spark deep in my chest. Maybe hope, maybe vengeance. And then it happened. I was scrolling LinkedIn during a fake note-taking break in a budget alignment meeting when I saw it. A notification, redacted like a post from Clairvoyant Metrics. I froze. The name was familiar. A senior partner from a consulting firm we'd pitched to last year. Back when Mark was still calling my prototype a glorified Excel macro. That partner had been in the room when I pitched the first iteration. She'd worn a blood orange blazer and asked a single question that no one else in the room understood. And now, she was liking posts from a nobody startup with no photo, no founder bio, no funding press. My hands got clammy. I closed the app and stared at the floor like it had answers. Had she connected the dots? Did she know it was me behind the curtain? I spent the rest of the day in a paranoid fog, second-guessing every breadcrumb I'd left behind. Was the slogan too similar to my original pitch? Had I reused language from that internal deck? Had someone on my tiny beta forum dropped my name without realizing? That night, I sat in bed with my laptop, running background checks on myself, Googling fake aliases, testing LinkedIn searches, clearing cache, logging in from incognito tabs. I wasn't being hunted, yet, but the shadows were shifting. Someone out there saw what I was doing, and they didn't look away. But instead of shutting down or pulling back, I felt electric. For once, I wasn't hiding in fear. I was building something real, dangerous, desired. If she had recognized the work, it meant I wasn't just spinning in my own delusion. It meant the tool had weight, resonance. It meant I was no longer just playing defense. The job, it was a paycheck and a badge swipe. But my real work, that was out there, breathing, evolving, and people, important people, had started to notice. Mark once told me no one remembers who almost changed the game. Funny thing is, he was right. It was supposed to be just a quiet little AMA. I'd posted it under a burner account on r/saws, something innocuous like I built a niche forecasting tool for small businesses, ask me anything. No real identifiers, no links to me personally. Just screenshots of graphs, few cleaned up metrics, and vague nods to tech stacks. The post didn't go viral, but it caught fire in the right circles. Comments flooded in from solo founders, boutique retailers, even a former Amazon logistics analyst who said, "This is how we should have been doing it from the start." And then, tucked between a question about customer acquisition and a thread debating LSDM models, I saw it. A message, founder here. I've done early stage investing in similar verticals. Would love to talk, DM me if open. I stared at that sentence like it was a hallucination. I even refreshed the page twice to make sure it hadn't disappeared. My first thought wasn't excitement. It was, oh God, what if this is bait? What if Mark's finally playing chess instead of tic-tac-toe? But I clicked. ID med, we spoke. The call was short. He was sharp, concise, and already impressed. That he'd tested the public demo and used it to benchmark inventory trends in his own DTC portfolio companies. Called it clean, fast, and suspiciously cheap to run. Then he said the words that almost made me drop my tea. I'll wire you $150K for pre-seed, no strings, no board seat. Just a safe note and I get in early. You've got something here, I smiled. Then I panicked. I dug up my employment contract from a dusty drawer and started reading like a lawyer in a hostage negotiation. Did my NDA cover outside projects? Kind of. Was there a clause about inventions built using company resources? Yes, but I hadn't used a bite. Could they argue conflict of interest? Maybe if they knew, but they didn't, because I was a ghost, a burnout, reliable shadow in team meetings with nothing controversial to say, and a stress ball always within reach. I signed the safe, filed the LLC paperwork that same night, rented a PO box under the new company name, hired a part-time dev I'd met through the AMA thread, some genius in Montana who worked for stock options, and told me my code was surprisingly clean for a solo founder. I told him I wrote most of it after midnight, fueled by rage and leftover pad thai. He said that tracked. With real cash came real pressure. We migrated to better infrastructure, replaced our sketchy hosting with something that wouldn't implode under traffic, and started mapping out a beta rollout. The dev added a plugin for Shopify and a Stripe integration in under a week. I cried at my desk like a proud mom watching her kid ride a bike made of algorithms. Meanwhile, in the helmet that was still my day job, the broken forecasting system was now on fire, publicly. Sales missed targets by 14%. Marketing had no idea what to promote next quarter. And finance had begun issuing polite but menacing slide decks titled Reassessing Predictive Infrastructure. And where was I? Assigned to damage control. Mark tossed me into a tiger team like a last-ditch Hail Mary, thinking I'd be useful now that we were pivoting towards solution-neutral input structures. That's corp speak for our expensive toy broke, and we need someone to make it look intentional. So I sat in meetings, silently watching as overpaid consultants reverse-engineered spreadsheets I could have replaced with 3 API calls and a working neural net. One VP suggested building a temporary manual override workflow. I muttered, "So, Excel?" He didn't laugh. I nodded, took notes, offered nothing. All while knowing that on my second screen, hidden behind Slack and a fake spreadsheet, I was watching Clairvoyant Metrics onboard 5 new users and close our first $900 monthly subscription. One of them was a wine distributor in New Jersey who called the dashboard damn near psychic. I couldn't tell anyone, not yet, but inside I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was sharpening the knife. Hit the trade journal on a Tuesday, right between my first cup of stale office coffee and a passive-aggressive email about Q4 timelines. A dark horse in forecasting, the AI tool indie retailers swear by. No founder name, no backstory, just a sleek screenshot of Clairvoyant Metrics dashboard, my dashboard, pulled from some early users' LinkedIn post. The article called it shockingly intuitive, nimble, and a credible threat to bloated incumbents. I stopped breathing halfway through the second paragraph. That article, it was blood in the water. Within hours, our little anonymous support inbox lit up. Most were curious customers or cautiously excited boutique brands. But one made my fingers lock around my mouse. Hi, Clairvoyant team. We're conducting early-stage tech evaluations and would love to schedule a short demo of your product. Let us know your availability. Team Bluepoint Analytics Bluepoint, them. Our company's largest direct competitor. Bigger, faster, meaner. The same firm that had poached 2 of our senior leads last year. The same firm Mark used to snidely call our overfunded little cousins. I checked the email twice for signs of spoofing. Triple-checked the IPS. It was real. And my guts twisted like a wrung-out towel, because this was it. This wasn't beta users and Reddit geeks anymore. This was Warzone territory. And I wasn't even wearing armor. I was still pretending to care about internal brand cohesion decks at my day job. I set up the call using a spoof scheduling link and routed everything through a fake founder alias. Clara V, no webcam, no logos, just audio and screen share. My voice, filtered through an AI modulator I'd paid $47 for the night before, pitched slightly lower, with an accent toggle to mask inflection. When the call started, 3 men from Blue Point joined, tense, polite, predatory. The first guy tried to corner me with tech lingo. What kind of recursive learning rate adjustment are you running for delayed input windows? I gave him just enough to sound real, just enough to confuse him. We use time-weighted dropout smoothing over Bayesian flux. Keeps the margin of error sub 4% across downstream variability. Which was technically true, also technically something I invented while drunk on boxed wine. The second guy was the negotiator. We'd like to explore exclusive licensing, he said. Calm, like this was inevitable. He offered vague numbers, high 6 figures, then low 7. The tone said this is generous. Take it before we bury you. I told them we weren't seeking exclusivity. I told them we were focused on community-driven beta improvements. I told them politely to screw off. The screen went silent for a second. Then someone said, "Fair enough, you'll hear from us again." I ended the call and immediately vomited into my recycling bin. Dignity 0, panic 1, and still I didn't regret it, because the next day it started. Whispers at work. Slack DMs. A mention in a meeting. Has anyone heard of this Clairvoyant Metrics thing? Apparently it's gaining traction. One of the VPs muttered, "There's talk it's poaching our small accounts." Mark didn't say a word, but I saw the way his fingers tensed on the table. Someone forwarded a link to the same article I'd read. Mark replied with a dismissive seems niche, but I knew him better than he knew himself. He was sweating, because he'd seen the dashboard. He'd seen it. Back when it was just a slide and a pitch he smirked at and tossed aside like stale gum. Now it was back, with teeth. The email came in at 2:13 a.m., time-stamped in some Pacific time zone. I'd been up working on a new onboarding flow for resellers, sipping lukewarm tea and stress-checking user feedback like it was a heartbeat monitor. When the notification pinged, I almost ignored it. Then I saw the subject line. Acquisition proposal confidential urgent response requested sender. A senior partner at Bluepoint Analytics. The same guy from the demo call. The one who offered me table scraps with a condescending smile. But this wasn't scraps, this was a buffet. They were offering a high 8-figure acquisition. Full buyout, clean equity conversion, Founder earnout clause spanning 3 years, an optional public announcement pending your preference, and tucked in the bottom in legalese, we are prepared to move quickly. This offer expires in 96 hours. I sat frozen, blinking at my screen. Cursor pulsed like a countdown. 8 figures. That number used to live in my dreams, curled up next to impossible. Now it was just there, plain, calculated, real. I stood up, walked in circles, whispered with the F 6 or 7 times like a broken prayer, checked the offer again, then emailed my startup lawyer at 2:24 a.m. with the subject line, "We need to talk." Now, he called within 10 minutes, half asleep but wired once he saw the terms. "Holy hell," he muttered. "You realize this would make you," "Yes," I said, "but also, I know." Emotionally, I wasn't elated. I wasn't even scared. I was stunned. The kind of stunned where reality stops feeling real and everything gets very, very quiet, like standing in the eye of a hurricane you built yourself. But I didn't sign immediately. I negotiated. We trimmed a few claws out of the earnout clause. Made equity conversion cleaner. Secured a side deal to keep 2 of my part-time devs on board post-acquisition. I wanted them taken care of. They helped build this. Even the kid in Montana with the weird anime avatar. And when the dotted lines were finally signed, and the funds hit escrow, and the PR team drafted the language for the announcement, I added one line. Founder, my name because hiding time was over. The press release went out at 10:02 a.m. on a Monday. By 10:06, I had 3 voicemails, 14 Slack pings, and a meeting invite marked urgent. Emergency board discussion 11 a.m. I was still technically an employee for 4 more days. The boardroom was full by the time I walked in. All eyes on me. Mark was already there, sweating bullets through his lavender shirt, collar open like a man caught mid-panic spiral. The CEO didn't even look up when I entered. He just flipped through a printed copy of the announcement, then glanced across the table at Mark. "You said no to this?" Mark tried to speak, mouth opened, hands fidgeting, but nothing came out. Just that deer-in-the-headlights wheeze of a man watching his legacy get bulldozed by something he once called a fantasy. I didn't sit. I didn't need to. I stood there, calm, composed, electric with purpose. It said only this: I have 4 days left on payroll. Let me know how you'd like to use them. And then I walked out. Not to my cubicle, not to my old desk, but to the elevator, to my own office, to my new life. The one Mark said was impossible. The next time I walked into that boardroom, it wasn't as an employee. It wasn't even as a guest. It was as the founder of Clairvoyant Metrics, now a wholly owned subsidiary of Blue Point Analytics, valued at just shy of 9 figures, with my name in bold on the press release and a stack of contracts that made it clear. I wasn't here for promotion. I was here because I won. The room was colder than I remembered, more sterile, or maybe that was just the difference between being owned and being in charge. Mark was already seated, tie askew, fingers twitching like he hadn't slept since Monday. The same man who once scoffed at my prototype was now glaring at the floor like it might swallow him whole. I didn't feel anger toward him. I didn't feel much at all, just clarity. He opened his mouth to speak, probably some panicked attempt to reframe, redirect, salvage whatever ego he had left, but the CEO didn't even let him inhale. "Don't," the CEO said sharply, "just one word. A full guillotine." Everyone turned to me, and I stood. No pitch deck, no blazer, no need to prove anything. Just me in a black turtleneck and jeans, the outfit I wore the night I coded the first usable prototype in a greasy diner booth. The CEO flipped the folder shut with a dry slap. "How many other fantasies did we reject?" He asked aloud, not to anyone in particular. Maybe himself, maybe the ghosts of every good idea that ever got buried under bureaucracy. No one answered. I smiled. Not the smug kind. The kind you wear when you finally get a breath of clean air after years underwater. I took one last look at that long table, the fake plants in the corner, the lukewarm coffee sweating in carafes no one ever washed properly. "Thank you for the severance," I said, soft but clear. It helped keep the servers running those first few months. A few people chuckled under their breath. I saw Jared, the junior analyst who once quietly believed in me, blink hard and look away like maybe he was proud, or maybe just stunned. Then I turned, walked out of the room, out of the building, into a black car already waiting, idling like it knew this was coming. Across town, a new office with my name on the lease was already buzzing, whiteboards filled, roadmaps outlined, my team fired up and caffeinated. We had new clients to onboard, a feature sprint to finish, a beta version going live in Australia by next week. Mark. He never came up again. His fate was corporate entropy. Maybe reassigned, maybe resigned, maybe just another LinkedIn update that gets scrolled past without a click. He was irrelevant, but me, I was never invisible again. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.